Welcome to The Survival Historian, where the past instructs the present. Today, we're stepping back into the homes, gardens and streets of wartime Britain, a nation where survival wasn't a hobby discussed online, but a daily reality enacted by millions. Imagine your grandparents not scrolling through feeds, but learning to extinguish an incendiary bomb in their backyard. Picture them in their living rooms, practicing how to shelter from a gas attack or standing vigil on rooftops as enemy aircraft droned overhead. These ordinary citizens became frontline defenders of their own survival. But here's what makes this story remarkable: the drills they performed, the ingenious adaptations they mastered, and the collective resilience they forged didn't just win a war. They offer us profound lessons about preparedness, community, and human endurance. So what forgotten survival skills did ordinary Brits master during wartime? And how do these homefront practices still echo through the corridors of modern survival awareness? The story of British civilian preparedness begins not with grand strategy, but with quiet necessity. As Nazi aircraft darkened the skies above Britain, the government realized a terrifying truth: the front lines had come home. The Blitz, which rained fire and devastation on cities from September 1940 through May 1941, transformed ordinary housewives, shopkeepers and factory workers into active participants in their own defense. These weren't soldiers behind fortified lines. They were neighbors organizing in church halls, families huddled in converted basements, and children learning to identify enemy aircraft by silhouette. The drills that emerged from this crucible were not theatrical exercises. They were matters of life and death, repeated until they became muscle memory, until the sound of the air raid siren triggered an automatic response etched into the national consciousness. What made these drills revolutionary was their democratization of survival. Every citizen, regardless of age or social standing, had a role. Every repeated action, no matter how mundane, contributed to the survival of the nation itself. At the heart of Britain's home-front defence stood the Air Raid Precaution Scheme, or ARP, a transformation of civilian life so complete that it reshaped the geography of British homes and streets. Picture a winter evening in 1940. Across the nation, families were hanging heavy black fabric over windows, checking the edges by candlelight to ensure not a single photon of light escaped to guide enemy bombers. This wasn't paranoia, it was calculated survival. The blackout drills were performed religiously, night after night, until they became second nature. Simultaneously, gas mask drills turned the rubber and canvas respirators into familiar companions. But the most tangible drills involved shelter. Some families descended into Anderson shelters, corrugated steel bunkers half buried in gardens lined with mattresses and blankets. Others sheltered in Morrison shelters, steel table-like structures installed in living rooms that transformed sitting rooms into fortified refugees. Families practiced entering these spaces during drills, learning to move quickly and efficiently even in darkness. They stockpiled supplies: water, tinned food, a hurricane lamp, a first aid kit. When the real bombs fell, these rehearsed routines became lifelines. Neighbors shared stories afterward. The family that reached their shelter in 40 seconds flat because they drilled it so many times. The young girl who calmly distributed water to frightened neighbors because she'd learned how during civil defense lectures. As incendiary bombs rained down on British cities, a new breed of hero emerged: the fire watcher and the air raid warden. Beginning in January 1941, fire watching became compulsory for many civilians. Picture the scene on a London rooftop during a raid. Men and women equipped with stirrup pumps, sand and long-handled shovels, watching for the telltale flash of incendiary bombs striking nearby buildings. These devices burned at over 1,000 degrees Celsius and could ignite entire neighborhoods if left unchecked. But fire watchers, often ordinary clerks or factory workers, had learned to act with precision. Air raid wardens, thousands of them, directed people to shelters, searched rubble for survivors, and became the visible face of organized civilian defense. They wore armbands, carried rattles to signal danger, and knew their streets intimately. The warden at the corner shop wasn't a distant official. They were Mrs. Henderson, who knew every family's shelter location, who could be trusted with keys during evacuations, who embodied the principle that survival was collective, not individual. Beyond the bombs, ordinary Britons faced another existential challenge: hunger. As German U-boats strangled Atlantic supply lines, food became precious, and rationing became the framework for survival. But rationing drills weren't just about deprivation. They sparked extraordinary ingenuity. The government's Dig for Victory campaign transformed gardens, parks, and bomb sites into vegetable patches. Kitchencraft became a survival skill. Recipes adapted to rationing taught housewives how to stretch an ounce of butter across an entire week, how to create nutrition from dried eggs and powdered milk, and how to make jam from foraged berries. These weren't gourmet techniques. They were formulas for endurance, for maintaining health on 1,500 calories a day. The Women's Voluntary Service distributed meal plans and cooking tips, ensuring that knowledge flowed through communities, that no one family had to solve these problems alone. The genius of Britain's home front preparedness lay in its inclusivity. Every demographic had a defined role, a way to contribute, a skill to master. Evacuee children, separated from their families and sent to the countryside, learned resilience through displacement. They practiced gas mask drills in rural schools, participated in mock air raids, and returned to cities with a hardened understanding of wartime reality. Their evacuation itself was a survival mechanism, though tinged with the psychological cost of separation. On the home front, children collected scrap metal, iron railings, aluminum pots, really anything that could be melted down for weapons production. The act of gathering, sorting, and contributing gave children agency in their own survival. Teenage boys joined the Home Guard, learning basic military skills and sentry duty. Teenage girls joined the Women's Land Army or trained as nurses and auxiliary personnel. Every person, regardless of age, had a place in the machinery of survival. Adults joined organizations with specific functions. The Women's Voluntary Service brought meals to those bombed out of their homes, organized rest centers, and provided psychological comfort alongside practical assistance. They learned to assess needs quickly, to organize resources efficiently, and to maintain morale even as rubble smoldered around them. These weren't passive observers of wartime. They were active architects of survival, their drills and training transforming chaos into managed crisis. When we look back at these homefront drills from our distance in time, we might, see them as quaint artifacts of a bygone era. But beneath the surface, there's a profound truth about the human capacity for adaptation and collective resilience. The Britons who practiced these drills possessed something that's increasingly rare in our rather atomized modern world: confidence that they could survive through preparation, community coordination, and repeated practice. They understood that survival isn't improvised in the moment. It's actually rehearsed in advance until competence becomes confidence and fear, transforms into action. Modern society faces, I suppose, different threats, from natural disasters to pandemics to infrastructure failures, but the principles really remain unchanged. Communities that invest in preparedness, that conduct drills, not as theatrical exercises, but as serious rehearsals for possible futures, create networks of resilience that can withstand shocks. We can learn from Britain's wardens and fire watchers the value of local organisation and mutual aid. We can adopt their approach to resource management, understanding that scarcity, should it come, demands ingenuity and shared sacrifice rather than panic. We can teach our children not to fear potential crises, but to prepare for them with the same methodical approach Britons applied to their gardens and shelters during the Blitz. The home front drills of wartime Britain represent something we've, perhaps, largely forgotten. The idea that ordinary people, properly trained and organised, can meet extraordinary challenges. The question for us today is whether we possess the wisdom to revive that spirit of preparedness before necessity demands it. The survival drills of wartime Britain echo across 8 decades, reminding us that preparation isn't paranoia, it's respect for the fragility of civilization and confidence in human resilience. If you've found yourself moved by the ingenuity and courage of ordinary Britons facing extraordinary circumstances, we'd really love to have you join us on this journey through survival history. Please like this video, share it with others who understand that history teaches us how to endure, and subscribe to The Survival Historian for more explorations of how our ancestors adapted, survived, and triumphed through preparation and community. Together, let's ensure that the lessons of the past illuminate the possibilities of the future.